In lesson 2-1, we will read and write integers and find the absolute value of a number. An integer is a number, what we call whole numbers are like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, okay? And so integers include those. These are whole numbers, all right? But then once we say integers, we actually include our negatives. So then we have -1, okay, we're going to have -2, we're going to have -3, and so on. So we're not only including 0 and all the positives, but now we're going to include the negatives. When we say the word integer, that's what we're talking about. A negative integer, obviously, we would say if we had a number line, okay, that would be to the left of 0 on the number line if this is 0. Okay, and if we have a positive integer, and we would be on the right side of the number line on 0, that's the positive side. Okay, when we talk about graphing integers, that is what we're talking about here, is using a number line. So positive integers are to the right of 0, and negative integers are to the left. The absolute value. When we talk about absolute value, we're talking about the distance an integer is from 0. Okay, so for example here, if I had -3, how far is it from 0? 1, 2, 3 units. So the absolute value of -3 is 3. Okay, now absolute value has a set of symbols. They're straight up and down lines. Don't confuse these with parentheses. Parentheses are completely different. So if I said the absolute value of -2, okay, what I'm asking is, what is the distance from 0? So if I go to -2, how far is it from 0? 1, 2 units. So the absolute value of -2 is 2. Now, if I were to say the absolute value of +3, okay, now how far is 3 from 0? 1, 2, 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So it's not like we're taking the opposites of the numbers. The absolute value of -2 is 2. The absolute value of 3 is 3. So we're not taking opposites. We're just saying what is the distance that it is from 0. And these symbols here, you would read this as the absolute value of -2. That's how you read these symbols. All right. So now, first of all, we're going to just practice writing integers. So we have to read the problem and then figure out how we would interpret that situation with numbers. A total rainfall of 2 inches below normal. Now this word below is key. Okay, so obviously we have the number 2. Now the word below means we need to put a negative in front of it. And that's all that means. Okay, and so there's not a lot of work that you're going to need to show for your homework when you're doing these types of problems. You're just going to have to notice these words. It says above, obviously we're talking about a positive number. If it says below, we're talking about a negative. Now here it says a total snowfall of 5, there's my number, 5 inches above normal. Now you can either write +5 or you can just write plain old 5, because we know that if the number is written 5 with no symbol, we assume that it's positive. So you can either say +5 or just plain 5 for answer. It's probably most common just to see it without the positive, but if it is negative, then you have to have the negative symbol. All right. So now you're going to have some problems that ask you to graph a set of integers on a number line. So this is practicing for this. You're going to have to draw your own number line for homework. It says graph the set of integers -1, 3, -2 on a number line. So the first thing we need here is we need a 0. So let's make a 0 here. Let's go ahead and do our positive number, our 3. So this is going to be 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to plot my points. I draw my circle. Okay, and there's 3. You can go ahead and label it, or maybe just circle the 3 because that's where your point is. And I'm going to use red to do my negative. So let's do -1 and -2. So now, since they're right next to 0, this first one is -1, the next one is -2. Okay, so I'm going to plot my points. There's -1, there's -2. Okay, you can circle those two if you want, and there we graphed our set of integers. Now, it didn't tell us to graph 0, 1, or 2, but we still need them on the graph in order to get to our values. So you should still include them, it's just we don't have any points on those spots in the number line. All right, the absolute value of a number is the distance the number is from 0. So again, a negative 5 has the absolute value of negative 5 is still 5. And then the absolute value of positive 5, okay, they kind of switch these around here. The absolute value of positive 5 is 5. So it's not like we're taking the opposite. So what is the, it says evaluates, we're going to answer, evaluate the expression, the absolute value of negative 8. So the absolute value of negative 8, you would copy this out of your book. And what is the distance negative 8 is on a number line? Well, negative 8 is 8 units from 0 on our number line. So 8 would be your answer. Now, this brings up an interesting point here. If we think of PEMDAS, all right, the P stands for parentheses, but it also stands for grouping symbols. And our absolute value symbols are grouping symbols. So if you ever see absolute value symbols in an expression or equation, you have to evaluate that part first if you're following order of operations correctly. All right, so let's try some more. It says evaluate the expression, the absolute value of negative 9. So in your assignment, you would copy the absolute value of negative 9. Make sure you copy the absolute value symbols is positive 9, because negative 9 is 9 units from 0. And whenever we talk about like a distance, it would be positive. All right, so evaluate the expression, the absolute value of negative 4 minus the absolute value of negative 3. So you first copy the absolute value of negative 4 minus the absolute value of negative 3. Okay, now we need to evaluate the grouping symbols, the PEMDAS, okay, the absolute value symbols. So the absolute value of 4, negative 4, is 4. Now this stays the same, so we just got to bring it down. You know, we're still subtracting. And the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Now what is 4 minus 3? We get 1. So that's our final answer. All right, now it says evaluate the expression, the absolute value of 8 minus the absolute value of negative 5. Now, I know many of you see this, and you're already thinking, oh, I know what to do, I know what to do. But you have to evaluate the absolute value first. So what is the absolute value of 8? Well, that's just 8. And then we bring this down, minus, what's the absolute value of negative 5? Well, that's positive 5. So 8 minus 5 gives us 3. So some of you might have been like, well, I got to change this to a positive. You're right if we don't have the absolute value symbol. Remember, absolute value, we have to follow order of operations, and we have to evaluate the absolute value first. So be careful with that. All right, and that's our last example for today's lesson in 2-1. Be sure to check the Moodle page for your assignment.